Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Monday, July the 26th edition of Track Announcer's Notebook. For those of you who've already joined us, we've got Superbike, reigning Superbike and 14-time champion Jordan Szoke with us, along with Ben Young, our 2019 CSBK Canadian Superbike champion. Lots to talk about, including the opening event, rounds 1 and 2 at Calabogie, and we're also going to talk CTMP and the triple header that was announced last week. So lots of ground to cover with Jordan and Ben, but up first, as always, Stuart Nodell, my co-host with Nodell's Notes. Stuart, another busy weekend.
It was, Pat. Thanks. It was actually my first time getting to actually go to a racetrack since COVID. So I went to the SOAR round 3 at Grand Bend, but just for the Saturday. I couldn't make it for Sunday, but it was nice just to be back at a racetrack. It rained Saturday morning for some of the earlier qualifiers in the day, but after lunch, the track dried out. And the story of the day and ended up being of the weekend was Steve Nickerson. He looked great on his Honda CBR 1000 Superbike. And he started the qualifying heat race in about third or fourth position, took his time, and then with about 2 laps to go, he passed Scott Rupert, and then sort of built a little bit of a cushion. And he went obviously to win on Sunday, and he's lapping under, it was at 49.6, I believe was his best lap time. So he's going really well. So hopefully these guys can have a CSBK national there. I'd love to see some of the local fast guys from SOAR go against guys like Jordan and Ben for sure.
Well, hopefully we will see Steve Nickerson on the August 13 to 15 weekend. I know a couple of weeks ago, after doing the opening round of the Super Series, Eli DeKosh totally dominated there on his Yamaha. So if we can get some of the top pro riders who are running Superbikes with the regional series to show up at CTMP, then I think we could be looking at a Superbike grid that's 25 or more Superbike riders.
Yeah, and then just here's some of the results. The one guy that really stood out to me on the Saturday was a first-year pro by the name of Trevor Dion. And this weekend was his first weekend. They've just acquired a BMW Superbike, and he finished second in his first ever race weekend on a 1000cc bike, and he looked incredible on the bike in qualifying. So I think he's someone we've got to definitely have on the show in the future, Pat.
Yeah, and another rider who could show up at Canadian Motorsport Park for what will be rounds 3, 4, and 5 of the CSBK Pro Superbike Championship. And I would assume Chris Platch and David McKay running their 600s up in the Superbike class, and Scott Rupert, he's been around for decades, but still consistently able to go out there and run in the top 5 at most of the regional Superbike rounds. And again, that might be another guy who shows up on the August 14-15 weekend.
Yeah, Chris Platch, he looked great, actually. He won the qualifying heat race on the 600, but as you can see here in the results from Sunday, Pat, Trevor Dion took the win, followed by David McKay, and then Platch was in third. David McKay, interestingly, he crashed on the, unfortunately, on the out lap in the qualifying heat race. So he certainly redeemed himself for Sunday.
Yeah, and the Bauer brothers there in 4th and 5th, again, with some of the 600 class riders. I think we'll see some of those guys show up at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park as well in August.
Yeah. And then Pro 6 also had their regional series go on at the same weekend, or this last weekend as well, at Calabogie. And from what I couldn't find lap times and stuff, but Tommy Cassas won his first ever Superbike race, and we had him on a few weeks back. Great young rider, and congratulations to him. He looked great. And these guys were lapping. I think Tommy's quickest time was a 2:02 with a 3 or a 4, I believe. But that was, front running pace for the national, and Sam Garan ran a 2:02.6, so he's right there as well. So I think the race at CTMP's looking pretty solid for at least 6 or 7 bike rider freight train at the front.
Yeah, I think both for Tommy and Sam to run that Pro 6 Cycle GP event on the weekend just getting the seat time, staying sharp, and both of those riders will be in fine form at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. I also want to give a shout out to Jordan Royds, one of our pro Superbike rookie riders, who we had on the show last week, along with Alex Dumas. He tried to be marathon man on the weekend, was at Calabogie on Saturday, ended up finishing, I believe, 6th in the Superbike race. His time was about what he ran at the National. I don't think he was real pleased with that. Then did the 8-hour trek to Grand Bend and ran the final, starting in the back row there. I think he was 3rd in the sprint race earlier in the day, but then I think all of the traveling and everything, I think he's pretty much exhausted for the Superbike race and ended up finishing in 9th. So he's got a couple of weeks to get things together and show up at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. And I think his goal there will be to run in the top 10. But I think as tight as the competition was at Calabogie back on the July 10-11 weekend, I think it's going to be even more so at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park.
Yeah, no doubt. Also, I just wanted to know, Michael Leon or Sebastian Tremblay rode in the Superbike race on a Superbike, and he finished 3rd, just ahead of Michael Leon, and Ivan Babich rounded out the top 5. So, yeah, there's lots of depth of the field in both series. So hopefully we'll see them go at Mosport in a few weeks. But I also wanted to shout out to Brad McRae, who had a very dominant 600 amateur sport bike win, and he won by over 13 seconds. So I know we're going to have him on in a future show as well. So just thought I'd point that out.
Well, next Monday night, we can't give the pro riders all of the airtime. We're going to have our top 3 riders from the opening amateur sport bike race at Calabogie on. Brad McRae, along with Matthew Simpson and Nathan Playford. All 3 of those amateur riders will be on next Monday night. So we invite you to tune in for that. Stuart?
Yeah, awesome. And at Assen this past weekend, World Superbike was back in action, and Johnny Ray did the double, and he's now the only rider in World Superbike to have 13 victories at one single track. So congratulations to him and the Kawasaki World Superbike team.
Jordan and Ben, we're going to have you hop on here and talk a little bit. I don't know how closer you follow World Superbike. Any thoughts down the road beyond 2021 that you could possibly look at running a World Superbike round somewhere?
Yeah, maybe if Ben wins the lottery, we could go. I mean,
go.
We could both go.
Okay.
I've had opportunities to race in World Superbike many a times. Lots of approach for like B, C rides, but you got to bring $300,000 or more now. But at the time, I was making that here, and why would I go and spend $300,000 when I could make $300,000, right?
Yeah.
Being Canadian, you don't bring anything to the table. Right now you have a Garrett there from America because America's the big market. It takes so much to go there. Pirelli kicked in money. A lot of people kicked in money for Brett to go. It wasn't just his skill, and that's the downside to racing is you need to bring something to the table. And Ben can attest to that. He raced over there a lot, right? He gets it. And I had an opportunity to ride for the MotoGP team. Schwantz is helping me get a ride on the WCM MotoGP team after Harley stopped racing in 2001. And at the last second, someone bought my ride out. Same with Ferracci. Matt Waite came back from MotoGP and bought my ride, and that's how I lost my Ferracci ride. So there's always someone with some money that's going to get your ride, unless you're Spanish, Italian, British, bringing some of that market to the table.
Ben Young, your take on a potential World Superbike race down the road for you?
Yeah, for sure. Stuff. I feel like Jordan definitely just nailed it on the head with hitting all aspects on it. As Jordan was in the past, a BMW rider, and those guys love, they love the North American market and love to have us on their program. You could hope there would be a bit of push from that, but at the same time, like you said, unless there's all of a sudden a big swing that they want to see another nationality there, it does make it very tough for us. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that any of us, the top three would be competitive, top 4 or 5 if we went over there. It's just getting to that point, and again, it's getting on the competitive package and having the right people around you. 2014 I did that year in BSB on the super stock, and I definitely didn't have the right people around me, and it took me to the point of getting John Cornwall over Corn Dog to work on the bike for one round, and it was just a night and day difference because these people, they don't want to listen to you. It's kind of their way or the highway, so it's definitely a tough situation to be in. So you want to make sure that everything is all in line and make sure you have the right package behind you. If not, like Jordan said, you might as well just stay at home instead of breaking your back on with the heavy load that goes with it.
Okay, appreciate your insight and your input there. Stuart?
Yeah, I'll continue here, Pat. And here's the overall championship now. You can see Johnny Ray's past Toprak Razgatlioglu, the Turkish rider.
Easy for you to say, Stuart.
That's
a track announcer's nightmare.
No doubt.
Whatever happened to Smith and Jones?
I know.
Or Young and Szoke?
Exactly. So, but you can see here, I've got the championship standings here, and the Yamaha riders 37 points back. So it's still a tight race in that championship. And then the American Flat Track was back on this past weekend in Pennsylvania, and Bauman was the big winner. And he's got a pretty decent lead in the championship, as you can see here. And he's got the most wins on the season. So, and they're racing in a few weeks, not to the middle of August, the same weekend. These guys will be racing at Mosport, and they're going in New York.
Yeah, and for our Flat Track Canada championship that unfortunately did not get to start in early July at Walton, they're going to be kicking off this Saturday night. Hopefully they get the weather. They're going to be racing at Welland. That'll be the opener for Flat Track Canada, and we wish Aaron Hesmer and the entire Flat Track Canada community all the best to get their season finally kicked off for this year.
And then now we're going to get into talking to both Jordan and Ben. I thought this was cool. I guess you'll get into it, Jordan, hopefully, about riding the Yamaha TZ250. Since I'm partial to Grand Prix bikes, I'll be curious to hear what Jordan has to say about his experience riding them. But also, there's a rumored test for the baggers at Daytona, Pat. And it sounds like it's going to be a tire test in August. So I think they're getting serious about having them race at Daytona next year alongside.
It's been tough to get the definitive word on Daytona. Certainly news out that the Daytona 200, Moto America is in conversation with the International Speedway Corporation, and then also makes total sense if you can get the hundreds of thousands of the cruiser crowd that's in and around Daytona for Bike Week to come out and watch a bagger race. You're going to sell a lot of tickets. So looking ahead to the 2022 Daytona 200 and possible bagger race. I'm not sure if they're going to bring back the Daytona TT. Of course, this year they started the race near Daytona at Volusia County Speedway in Barberville, but I think that'll all unfold in the months to come, exactly, what classes and what bikes are going to be running for the Daytona 200 and the possibility of a bagger race coming to Daytona International Speedway. So lots of good developments there. Ben and Jordan, you guys are pretty connected. What are you hearing about, the Daytona 200 and a possible bagger race at Daytona?
I haven't heard much, just from what you guys see. I don't really keep in touch with the guys competing down and doing the baggers. I know Eslick he did the last round he did there, and I was chatting to him about it. He had a ton of fun, but as far as doing more, I'm not too sure about that. But again, I'm sure all those guys are going to jump on that idea. I've never really been a fan of Daytona, but I feel like it's always a good race it's always a fun one, I feel. So for them to bring the baggers out there, it'll be a complete crowd pleaser. It's already, brought such a different atmosphere to the racetrack. And I feel like going to Daytona is just going to bring all those guys out. So I think it's a kind of a no-brainer for them. As far as a racing standpoint, it'd be a bit interesting, but fan standpoint, it's definitely a no-brainer, I feel. So.
Jordan, did you hear anything when you were at Laguna Seca a couple of weeks ago?
Nothing about Daytona. I mean, I was talking to Barney a bit about riding the bagger, and he'd come over every session and talk to Josh and I. I was mainly down there to ride my Phillip Island bike, and the TZ was just a treat. And they are always concerned about what lap times we were doing, because we ended up doing the same times that the baggers were doing, or I think, is it Kyle that was riding that, or who won it? They were doing a minute 31s and 32s, and that's kind of what we were doing. We would have got maybe a little quicker with some more time, but everybody was curious on how our Phillip Island bike would stack up against the baggers. But those baggers are pretty trick. They got 160 foot-pounds of torque, and they're worth a few $100,000 is what they're telling me. So they're quite the machine. It blows my mind how fast they're going on those things.
Yeah, interesting. Well, we'll hear more in the weeks and months to come about the Daytona 200 and the bagger class. Stuart, I think we've got a couple of questions or comments already for Jordan and Ben. Maybe you can handle those, and then we'll get into the conversation about Calabogie.
Just a couple more, not so much questions for the guys, but Mike Willis put in the Q&A, and he and his wife Linda, they work the pit out at Grand Bend, so it was just nice getting to meet him and his wife in person at the track. And Nathan Naslin was just also saying about the World Superbike race that there was a bit of a controversy between the two Yamaha riders. We didn't get into that, but Garrett Gerloff did take out his teammate, and the Turkish rider did DNF the one race. So it'll be interesting to see how things go now going forward.
Okay, so thank you, Stuart. We'll have, of course, Nodell's notes next Monday night, and cover everything that's going to be going on this weekend in the world of motorcycle road racing, and also recap the opening round of the Flat Track Canada series that kicks off at Welland. Great to have with us tonight on the show Ben Young and Jordan Szoke. Ben finishing second at Calabogie in both of the Superbike races behind Alex Dumas, and Jordan Szoke coming home in third in both of those races. First of all, Ben, take us through your weekend in your own words. What went well, and what was maybe a little bit challenging at times, because you did start out and you grabbed the pole, which is always great, taking that kind of momentum into the two Superbike races.
Yeah, it was a good weekend. We were all there the weekend before for a test on the Sunday, and we had a bit of an electronic issue, and we weren't able to record data, so therefore we had nothing from the past weekend apart from my writing input for the Friday or Thursday, Friday day. So it was tough, and the way the sessions worked out, 20 minutes is tough around a long track like that. Also being mixed in within a track day, so it was good. We worked a lot on the tire life through the Friday, and we never really shown our true pace. We went out Saturday morning with a new tire on in practice, and just one of these things that happens. We're all rusty. We haven't done anything, any events like this in a while, and I went out with 40 psi in my rear tire, and I believe it was Jordan Roy's who's behind me, and which I was, I'm fine with guys riding there. so I went to get on it, and it was think, whoa, corner 2, one to high side me. I was like, okay, it's a cold tire. Corner 3, whoa, same thing again. Okay, cold tire must be. So I kind of finished off that lap, and okay, go again with the heat in the tire. Same thing happened again. I was like, there's something not right with this. So we came in and we used the peak performance of that tire with 40 psi in it. So we ran that tire for the 2 practices, and again, it didn't really show true pace. It was kind of good going into qualifying, and we managed to get a solid lap in. And again, it was frustrating in qualifying. We were behind Alex when he crashed, and he got up and walked away before laying down. So we got caught by a red flag out at corner 5, Trevor and and I know a lot of the guys made it back to the pit. So, the last thing you want is these tires to drop temp and come back. So unfortunately, that's what happened. But luckily, we still managed to get a quick lap in the tire. So it definitely didn't go without its challenges, at least to that point as well. And we had some clutch issues, and we didn't get it fixed all weekend, and it just hindered our braking on the deep braking zones. I could get the back shifts in quick, but the slipper clutch wouldn't engage. It would be almost like the old school bike when the engine kind of binds up and it's fighting against the front and rear wheel speed, and you get the chatter through the chassis. So unfortunately had that in both races. We were hoping we were going to be able to fix it because it was an issue we had in qualifying, but it didn't happen. But with communicating with BMW and the OMG BMW team and BSB, race stringers helped us out with getting the right clutch ramp angle we need with the suitor. So got that sorted out for Motorsport, which will be good. So it's it was a good weekend. It was very nerve-wracking. I can't remember the last time I was that nervous for a race going into race 1. And we had electronic problems still through the race with launch control. When I'd hold it to the limit, launch control allows it to go to I think it's 9,500 RPM. So it would sit there, and I'd still keep it 100% throttle. Then the bike rolled itself back down to idle to 4,000 RPM, and that's when Chris Chappelle put the lights out. So that's why my race 1 start was completely botched, and very thankful I was still able to pull away and didn't have any issues as far as riders heading from behind, thankfully. So not the best start, but I feel like it was almost a mistake I kind of needed to. Not so much a mistake, more just the problem to have was to bring the nerves down, because I was no longer nervous because I was back in 6th place. So to fight back and have good race pace going into race 2, it was good. And the bike did it again at the race 2 launch, but thankfully it came back in RPM when Chris put the lights out. So another issue for us to fix, but just these gremlins with a new bike, you go through, Jordan's going through it right now as well, I'm sure, with their new bike. So it's tough, but still a good weekend. Would have liked to get the win and been that place ahead, but all in all, good. Going against, Alex, had a whole season last year under his belt, a whole year on that bike. So for us, our team and Jordan's team with new bikes, it was I feel a pretty good weekend for ourselves. And that track's my first time racing there. It's really tough to pass. Spent a lot of time doing the odd track day here and there, but it's a tough place to pass in a race situation. So there was moments we could have made the lunge, but for the situation, first round of the year, was it worth it? No. So it was a good weekend, and we're really excited to be rolling into Motorsport for Canadian Motorsport Park for a triple header. It's we're racers, we want to race, so it's great.
Yeah, want to come back and talk to you about that triple header, but Jordan, Ben has indicated some of the issues they dealt with for races 1 and 2, and I know in talking to you following your weekend at Laguna Seca when we touched on Calabogie, you were also dealing with some teething problems on the new Kawasaki. In your own words, take us through that Calabogie weekend for you.
Yeah, it was nice to be in Laguna, where I was riding bikes that just had carburetors and spark plugs. They make your life a lot easier, that's for sure. Yeah, you know, for us, we have a new bike, and but the chassis is very similar, so a lot of our setup stuff's very similar. But the electronics are all new. It's fly by wire now, and the lean angle for your traction control, that good stuff that the BMW has. But nobody wanted to tell us, or nobody knew to tell us, that the sensor ring on the front wheel speed sensor on the new bike is 56 slots now. And we are using last year's wheels because we have all the good RR wheels from last year. We don't need to buy new ones. And the slots on last year's bike is 48 slots. So our whole weekend, we being there, and even the test before, we were fighting like a misfire on the bike, and the traction control wasn't working. And one of my buddies is ripping across my front lawn on his dirt bike. And then you know, the engine brake wasn't working, so we go in electronically. You know, Ben's talking about a mechanical problem with his engine brake, but both of us, BMW and Cowie, you can adjust your engine brake electronically, and we keep adjusting all that, and it wouldn't make any difference. And then even you know, the photographers are out here and your bike's misfiring, and I'm going, yeah, like, you know, it wasn't getting off the corners. So it was a tough scenario. We couldn't figure out why. And then you know, communicating with John Cornwell all weekend about it. And then all of a sudden he made a few phone calls because he wasn't at the race with us. He was in the US, and he called me back, and he actually, I think he was talking to Gary Medley about it. They told us what the problem was. So we had no power getting out of the corner too. So it's called the ETV opening. So it's when you pick up the throttle, it's how much the throttle opens the butterflies to the connection of your hand. It's not one-to-one and all that. So none of that was working properly. So it was a big deal for us to figure that problem out. I mean, it's too bad we didn't figure it out at the race weekend, but it was good to actually find the problem and figure it out, and now being able to fix it. We also had a shock problem. You know, when I went down to Laguna, I brought all the data with me for John to read, and you know, he's like, there's something wrong with your shock, man. So when I got home, we measured it, and we had 47 millimeters of sag, and you should be 24 to 28. So we had a shock let go, didn't lose oil, but lost its pressure, and it had way too much sag. So we're to be right there battling with Ben and Alex and being I feel like I'm riding really well. I'm having a lot of fun riding this year. So it was really meant to find like two legit problems. I mean, we're always, you know, Ben will tell you, we're always chasing some problem, but that's a pretty significant one. My biggest problem right now is finding them. There's none anywhere in the world at the moment of those rings. I found 2 rings from MSS Performance in England. They ship them. They should be here tomorrow. But yeah, just trying to chase that down for Mosport. That'll be really good.
Okay. So in spite of all the challenges and mechanical and other difficulties, you guys still managed to you know, put it on the podium in both races. Jordan's got to step away for a minute, and Stuart, I think we've got a couple of more questions in the Q&A. And again, a reminder to everyone who has joined us here on Track Announcer's Notebook tonight, who have just joined us. Our guests are Ben Young, 2019 Canadian Superbike champion, and Jordan Szoke, the reigning and 14-time Canadian Superbike champion. We're talking Calabogie, and after we take care of these questions, we're going to wrap up Calabogie and talk about the big triple header coming up at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. Stuart?
Thanks, Pat. This first question really comes in for Jordan, and it's from Andy Hill from out at Shubenacadie. And he's asking if the Brady Bunch can have their couch back, and sorry that Shuby was canceled. See you next year.
You should have seen that couch a few years back. That couch is my parents from when they were first married, and then I had it recovered in gold. I figured it suited the my trophy room. But I got a cool picture here on my wall of my grandparents, myself at 1 year old, and them sitting on it. So it was definitely looks better than it was.
Awesome nostalgia. And then Henry DeGao has put in, Pat, and he's wanting to know from each of the guys what these guys think of an incident like Garrett Gerloff's where he took out his teammate on the weekend. Like to get their opinions.
Did either of you guys watch the race?
I'm watching it right now, actually. When you just before we signed in, yeah, I mean he's I guess he's Ben will say he's got himself into some trouble a few times this year. He's creating quite the maybe bad image that he needs to work on. I don't think he obviously means to be that. I think he's just excited to be running at the front with these guys, and it's just he's just got to calm down a little. But especially when your teammates leading the world championship, you really want to give him an extra few inches.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. It's you know, I grew up racing with Garrett in the US, and he was never that rider. So it is interesting to see. As Jordan said, I think he's just very hungry because he sees the front. He wants to go for the front, but it's that old cliche: you can't win the race on the first lap. So it's kind of pick your battles. But you know, we have seen worse things at that corner before. Bautista took out Lorenzo, and I want to say 2009 or 10 or something, and it definitely could have been a lot worse. So he's very lucky he's not injured. But yeah, it's not the ideal situation for Team Yamaha and them trying to win a World Superbike Championship. That's for sure.
Stuart, anything else in the Q&A before we move on?
Yes, just one more, Pat. If the guys had any of the dyno horsepower numbers from the CSBK dyno back at Calabogie.
Yeah, we got dynoed on Saturday, I believe it was, after qualifying. And with the new BMW, we have stock engines, unfortunately. They kind of jumped right from that 1920 project onto the M, and which is the M bike is unfortunately a completely different engine. So we called up BMW, Alpha, to see if we can make any progression internally for Motorsport, and they pretty much sent us a catalog for a whole engine. So yeah, with the stock engine, stock BMW with the electronics is 187. I did hear another BMW was 197, which was the previous gen, which sounds about right because that's what we managed to get out of the old gen as well. So 187 for us, but yeah, I'm not sure where everybody else was at.
Jordan, what about?
Yeah, I think we were around 192 on their dyno, 192, 194, something like that. You know, I know Alex was less than both Ben and I, so it's not just your peak power; it's how you're getting it to the ground and how it's all working, especially at Calabogie. You know, that it might be a little more beneficial when we get to the next round, but you know, we had the engine out here on Saturday. We're doing some changes. We're putting some different cams in. You know, we're continuing to develop you know, the bikes. You know, it's the same engine for us as last year. We're just developing it as we go. Scott from Fast Company came over and helped us with that on the weekend. The big thing for us, and you know, is getting finally getting able to ride this bike, because I've only ridden it you know, with the electronics not working. So it'll be nice to ride it with some electronics working. And you know, for them, they've made a step. You know, BMW's always been the, you know, in our stock form of racing, you know, a good electronic package. So I'm really excited when Cowie had the new package coming with the lean angle stuff. So it'll be nice to finally ride it that way. You know, last year we got our bike working really well. But I think what we're doing with this new cam stuff that we're doing, I think the bike's going to be even that much better.
Before we get into the triple header at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, I just want to go back to that second Superbike race at Calabogie, where I believe at the checkered flag, a second separated Alex Dumas, yourself, Ben, and Jordan. At the level that you guys are riding, we talked about Garrett Gerloff a little bit earlier and taking out his teammate. How much confidence and respect do you have to have with the guy who's right there beside you when you're running that fast? And I know you haven't raced against Alex until Calabogie, but that's got to be something that when you're running that fast, that close together, you've got to trust the other guy who's there with you.
Yeah, for sure. It's again, as you said, we haven't raced with Alex before, but we know his resume, we know the experience he has. So there was no doubt about it that you know, there's no worry there. Jordan and I have obviously raced against each other very closely over the years. So it yeah, for sure, you need that trust. The last thing you want is to be worried about, you know, somebody coming blasting down the inside of you. You know, again, for once, I was actually the one that I made a bit of contact with Alex. It was just one of those kind of sucked in moments. I think it was corner 13, but as Jordan knows, you know, that's not common of me. It's not. I don't think I've ever had rubber up his on his leg, so it's something that doesn't happen too often. But yeah, there's a lot of respect out there on the track, and as you said, it was close in the end. You know, that race 2 pace that we had was quick. Like even the last lap was still a 3 flat on, you know, 12 lap hole tires. It's pretty good going. So yeah, no, a lot of respect out there. And again, knowing the resume that he has and the experience, you know, not any worry with getting close to them.
Jordan?
Yeah, for sure. You know, like Ben and I, that's no brainer. We know each other so well from over the years. I guess Alex was the new unknown in there, and he seems to have a good head on his shoulders. And when I've talked to him, I've never met him before. You know, really, he seems like a really good kid, and he's got a good head on his shoulders. And obviously, he's going to get shown the ropes pretty quickly, riding where he was riding in the U.S. And so I wasn't worried about him really, and I wasn't worried about Ben. You know, I worry about the first few laps getting settled in. Always, you know, who's behind you, and you know, Cassas was there a bit as well. The one time only I was behind Cassas, he got a double draft on Ben and Alex, and the only time I thought, oh, maybe something might go wrong there because he got sucked into them. But Alex handled himself, or sorry, Cassas handled himself pretty good, and he was riding well. So that was good to see as well, because he hasn't been up there with us in the Superbike stuff either. But hey, there's going to be some rubbing in racing. Unfortunately, I've done a little bit of rubbing, not on purpose. Like Ben says, you get sucked in sometimes. I've tried to not be that guy, and but it does happen. And you know, if it's a little rub, I seen the rub that Ben had with Alex. It was pretty good little racing incident. Nobody was mad at anybody. It was just a little rub, and that happens. You know, it's when you're got your knee down in a corner and someone takes the bars out of your hands. That's what you don't want to see. And I think everybody that's riding with us right now is pretty good that way.
A little earlier, you're talking about top or horsepower on these superbikes. The difference between Calabogie and Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, you know, we talk about that run up the Andretti straightaway. Is that where you're focusing, or are you looking for rideable horsepower where you can accelerate all of the off of those corners and carry your speed? What's the delicate balance there in terms of setup and the horsepower?
Yeah, sorry, Jordan, you
go for it.
Okay.
I was just going to touch on, like, we're actually putting different cams in our bike this weekend that are going to bring the horsepower down on our bike going to Mosport or CTMP. So it's, even though it's still a fast track, you got to get out of the mosses and you have to jump off of the corner on the front straightaway, and you know, so we're going to be down a few peak horsepower, but we're going to gain in the middle. So, and Ben knows that too. It's that track, if it was a different corner coming onto the back straight away, you would be thinking a little differently. Like, it's such a slow corner. You really need to jump off of there.
Yeah, Jordan, yeah, absolutely. Like exactly what I was going to say. Coming out of 5B, getting that run, because one thing is it's uphill. It's an uphill battle down the back straight. So you really need to get out of 5B good and put yourself into a position to pass, because you have the draft. It's a completely different racetrack when you're riding it by yourself in qualifying versus in the race situation. You can't typically be where you want to be. You kind of end up where you kind of have to go to make it work, to get the draft and put yourself in a passing position. But no, he's absolutely right. Getting that drive out of 5B is something that we've kind of struggled in the past couple of years. And it's something that I've told my guys since the last time we were there, that is what we are going to accomplish next time we race at Motorsport, is to get out of 5B, because it's very important. You could be great, again, fast by yourself, but when you're in a race situation and there's 5 of you guys in the last lap, you want to be out of that corner good.
Alrighty. Preparation for the triple header in terms of your training. You've got one Superbike race on Saturday, but you've got two on Sunday. Any concerns about conditioning? I know both of you guys train extremely hard, and do you think that is going to be a factor, particularly that second race on Sunday? Maybe the Superbike riders that aren't in the best of shape are going to be at a disadvantage. Ben, first up, you.
Again, for ourselves, Jordan and I, and again, Alex proved it at Calabogie, and I know Trevor is. I've been doing a lot of riding and training with Trevor, and he is ready to go in fitness wise. That I'm not so worried about. For us, it's more of we'll need to be even more careful when we get to the lap riders at the near the back when we're coming around in those closing laps. Again, it's something we train for. It's you don't train for a 3-day race weekend, but we train for a long weekend's racing. No matter if it's 2 60-minute practices, a qualifying in one race, you always want to be your peak performance. For me, after Calabogie, I was kind of disappointed because I came home and I felt good. I was like, no, I wanted to come home tired. I wanted to make sure I gave it absolutely everything physically. I rode my road bike on Monday and got a personal best up a Prairie River climb, which is a 16-minute, 15-minute drawn out climb on the road bike, which Jordan's familiar with. And it's, to be able to go do a personal best on a loop or a hill climb that you climb twice a week is not really what I should be doing the Monday after the race. I should be 2 minutes slower. But then again, I did give it all at Calabogie, and to be able to pull that out on the Monday, I was very happy with where we're at physically. So, like I said, more the guys near the end when we're getting to the lappers. That's going to be the tough one on that third race.
Jordan, how about you? Yeah, I'm not quite as young as Ben, but no, I'm good with all that. I did 6 races in 2 days last weekend. I like the format. It's kind of neat. The only thing that ever makes me nervous when they have too many races is, we have small teams. I know they're just trying to get races in for their TV and for our series because of COVID, but it always makes me a little nervous to have, not from a fitness level, but from, I'm lucky I have 2 bikes. A lot of people don't. So when you have an issue, you don't want to see guys not making it to the race. But the good thing about CTMP is it's not a tiring racetrack. It doesn't physically beat you up. Calabogie's a little worse. I mean, maybe 3 races at Shuby, you might be complaining a little. That's probably our toughest track for a superbike rider, or say San Eustache. It's going to be good, and hopefully the weather cooperates, because what it's like there. It can be sunny in one corner and raining in the next, and hopefully they can fit it all in. Calabogie was tough because there's so many classes, so many races. Hopefully they do a better job with the schedule at CTMP and they can fit it all in.
Jordan, we touched on your weekend at Laguna Seca, finishing second to Josh Hayes on the Phillip Island bike. You came back on Sunday. Josh didn't ride Sunday, but you took the win there. I know you're planning on going to Australia next January to ride that bike. Did you accomplish what you wanted to accomplish on that weekend?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It's sad that we didn't get to do Phillip Island this year. It's such an amazing track. The place, the people, the staff that run it, they're happy that you're actually there. It's quite a nice feeling. And the team owner, Dave, he wanted to showcase the bikes a bit because they're so cool. And he asked us to come down there and do that. So we decided to do that. Unfortunately, Josh could only be there the one day. Ben Bostrom was supposed to ride Taylor's bike the one day. Not everybody could make it that's on the team. And then Ben, I don't know what happened. He flaked out or something at the last minute. But, Josh and I had a great race. We're good friends. It's just for fun too. I tried to pass him into one on the one lap. And I should have just passed him. I rolled out of it and gave him some room. One's pretty crazy there at Laguna. And then I was getting a better drive to turn 5 on him. And then there was a crash. So the last 3 laps of the race, there was a yellow flag. So that was my plan, was to pass him there. And then there was a lapper in the last corner that we had to split coming onto the front straightaway. And I think he beat me by an inch. So we had a really fun time. He was hurt a little bit too. His shoulder's bugging him. So I didn't, I wasn't expecting too much out of him, but him and I had a great time. He's a good friend of mine, and he's such a great competitor, and he rides those bikes really well. He's kind of our poster boy for those bikes, I guess you could say, on how to ride one, because they are tricky a little bit, but they are really fun. They wheelie to the corkscrew just like a super bike. They fly. They really do fly, and they're big 13 or 1400 cc bikes. Yeah, so they're pretty cool. They big flat slide carburetors and all that, but they do work really well leaned over on the edge of the tire. And I really enjoy riding them. I really do. They're really fun, super fun.
Yeah, and not only do we have a Canadian rider on that bike, the frames, of course, built by the late Dennis Curtis, who was a frame geometry wizard, and a bunch of those bikes going to Phillip Island. You also had a chance to ride a older Yamaha TZ 250. How much fun was it getting on a 2-stroke and winning all 4 of the races you were in Sound of Thunder and I think Sound of Singles 2-stroke were the 2 ARMA classes you ran?
Yeah, just to touch on the frame, actually, just for a second, the frame I was on was brand new. It was the last frame he built for us, with all the input that Josh, myself, and John Cornwell gave from Phillip Island and seating position and all that. So it was really cool to test. Plus we had a few breaks in the frame at Phillip Island that we had to address. So it was cool to ride the new frame that he had built for us and feel that how much it had improved. So that was really cool to be a part of that. And then, yeah, the TZ, I mean, the one I rode was so pretty. At first, I didn't even want to ride it. Carbon wheels, carbon bodywork. It was beautiful. When they asked me to ride it, I said, of course. I won the last 250 National GP Championship in Canada in '96, the last time that there was one. And I think the last time I rode an RS was in the early 2000s, playing at a track day with Sandy Noche. But the open 2-stroke class down there is so cool because it's a full grid of them, like whether it be 125s, 250s, 500s, and the 750s. And Ralph down there, who wins all those races, he's an ex-AMA 250 rider as well. So his bikes, the one bike he has, I don't even think Yamaha has one that trick. It's unbelievable. And then he's got an RS that he rides with carbon rotors, and he's got a Moto3 bike there with the traction control, wheelie control. Like he's got the two-stroke class down there is badass. It's really cool. And to hear them all going by too, it's just an awesome sound. And it was fun going back and forth between the two bikes. So you get off my big Phillip Island bike with all this engine braking, and then I get on a proper GP bike with no engine braking, and just the shift points and the way you ride them was so different. But the one race, Ralph and I went right to the line. I got him by an inch, and then I won the other three a little easier, I guess, than that one. But yeah, it was super fun and such a beautiful prepared bike. Mike, who let me ride it, he's a great guy, and yeah, I love it. I mean, I was teasing John all weekend long about it because John used to race them as well. So it was funny that John was working on mine, he was working on Dave's TZ as well. So he was almost like back in the heyday for him.
Yeah, indeed. Ben Young, what is your preparation going into the weekend at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park? Are you going to participate in any of the Pro 6 cycle or Rider's Choice track days earlier in the week before official practice on Friday?
Yes, Pat, the next time I'll be out will be on the Thursday of the race weekend. Unfortunately, due to work, I can't make it to anything prior to that. I was hoping to go to Grand Bend on Wednesday for a private day. A buddy of mine and actually a sponsor of Thomas's has rented out for the day, but just with work commitments, I can't swing that. So I know Thomas is out there the next 2 days, so that's awesome for him to get more track time. And again, unfortunately, couldn't make Pro 6 GP the weekend, but yeah, so we'll be out Thursday and get rolling. It's a pretty hectic day there usually for the McBride days, so hopefully we can get some clear track time, but just get up to speed. It's not every day we go to those speeds, so just get the eyes back in focus and get going for and ready for the Friday morning practice. And like Jordan says, hopefully back more to a normal schedule, the 40-minute practices and then a full qualifying. Just helps us out, get some clear lap time and get some useful data that you can string everything together.
And I believe Sandy Noche is going to have the special qualifying tires for CTMP only. Is that correct?
That is news to me. So that'll be an interesting one. It's always an interesting one. So we'll see. We'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if they do. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. It's a tough one. Again, we don't use this tire often. It's been the one time the last couple of years we've done it. So it's tough to it makes it tough to all of a sudden just say here's a tire, go fast on it, when you're just not used to it. So I'm not sure if the guys used it last year at the national there, but yeah, it's not an easy one. So we'll see if that comes along for us.
Jordan, I thought that Sandy had mentioned he had ordered qualifying tires, but only for CTMP. Is that what you understand? And we'll get the definitive word on a qualifying tire for CTMP on next Monday's show.
I haven't heard anything. I've been out of the loop a bit. I tried to talk to Colin Fraser, but I haven't heard back from him. Sometimes he's tricky to get a hold of. Depends. Laughing. So I mean, I'm hoping to get out on the Thursday as well. When I went on to when they decided it was going to be 3 races, now we need to be there that Thursday because qualifying is Friday. But when I went on to the track day for Rider's Choice, they're booked. So I'm hoping that Matt can get me in. I think that's they need to get their, pardon my French, but their shit together with this stuff in the future. And if they're going to have qualifying on their first day of a Superbike day. They need to give us a day of practice before. I don't think it's smart to have, I think that Thursday should be a CSBK day or a Pro 6 day, not a McBride day. And nothing against McBride, but he's not a part of the series, right? So that makes it tough. So hopefully I can get in there. I'm going to try and get out on the Monday as well, just to shake this electronic gremlin down on my bike and make sure that it's all working properly. And unless I can get out to something before then, to just make sure that that's fixed. And then, I'm not sure. I might be even riding some vintage bike at VRA weekend. I'm not sure yet at this point. But I'm a vintage guy. I guess get more vintage rides.
Well, VRRA must have found out what you were doing with Arma at Laguna Seca and decided to, hey, you got a good bike, let's get Szoke on it. Stuart Nodell, I think we've got a couple of more questions in the Q&A for Ben and Jordan.
Yeah, Pat, just a couple actually, and it was just noted that it was nice that you guys brought up Dennis Curtis and recognized him for his great chassis. And unfortunately, Jordan was able to do so well on them at both in Australia and at Laguna Seca last week. But also, Dennis's legacy continues with Byron Cox, who mentored under Dennis and now runs Cox Custom Fabrication Welding out of the same shop in Trenton. So the business does continue onwards, and that's from Nathan Naslin. And then the other question for Jordan is really, where does he see his future in vintage racing? Like even on the international scene, it seems to be growing quite a bit. Is that something that you will continue to pursue as you move forward on in racing?
Yeah, I mean, like I want to keep racing. Unfortunately, the last time I took money home from racing, as Ben knows, it's expensive. Last time I took money home from racing was 2009. And, I'm trying to, all my sponsors are great. They're doing everything they can, but it's still not enough to cover it. And so I'm trying to work and do that and then go through a nasty divorce on top of that. So my future is unknown. I'd like to continue racing as long as I can. I don't want to stop racing. I love it. What else am I going to do? I don't really have anything else in my life. My life's took a shitty turn. I don't talk to my son and I don't talk to my wife or my ex-wife. So all I have is racing. So I'm going to ride a motorcycle as long as I can afford to and as long as I can. And hopefully it's still with Ben and everybody in the modern classes. I still feel like I can improve. I'm not at that point where I don't feel like I can improve on a motorcycle. And I'm really enjoying it this year. I really am enjoying riding again. I feel like I'm riding as well as I have maybe 3 or 4 years. So the vintage stuff's just super fun because I love riding anything. And, the Phillip Island bikes are really enjoyable to ride them. And there's a lot of good riders in that race. I would say the first 5 rows are all proactive riders. So it's super fun when you have a grid full of people at that level. When I went down last weekend, besides Josh Hayes and Ralph and like maybe a handful of us, it's a club racing. So when I go to a vintage weekend, it's more for fun and there's not the pro level caliber there, but it is so cool riding all that old machinery or it's not really old anymore. When you put good tires on it and everybody's got good brakes now and stuff. So I look forward to doing more of it, down the road, just because I just love motorcycling and everything in it. And I've evolved through the time. I grew up when they weren't vintage motorcycles. I mean, I'm not quite as vintage as you, Pat, but I've been around for a while.
Now, I've announced a few vintage races in my day. Ben Young, what about you?
Yeah, I'm pretty jealous of all this vintage riding Jordan's getting in. It's I did my years on the 125 and then on the 250 as well. So it's riding those 250s is a lot of fun. Jordan was on looked like the 94 to 97 TZ 250, and I was on the 2000s onwards. So they're a lot of fun. Like I rode that thing in Calabogie, I think in 2010. and you just chase the gearbox through. Again, no engine braking. And after riding a big bike, I was riding a 600 in 2010 and jumping back to the 250 is 9-day difference. It's a lot of fun, and still to this day, one of the most fun I've had on two wheels is riding a 250. But yeah, there's lots going on out there, and it looks like Jordan's taking all the fun away from everybody.
Stuart, we've got anything else in the Q&A before we wrap things up?
Yeah, just one for each of the guys is, do you think we're going to see a new lap record at Mosport this or next round?
I'll take that one first.
Yeah, you go ahead.
Well, Ben, just
I'll
because
take it
Ben
first,
didn't.
you can take this first.
Yeah, there you go. Just because Ben hasn't, I don't think you, I don't, maybe I'm not sure. I don't think you've ridden there on the new pavement. I think it's slower on the new pavement, to be honest with you. Just from last year, the grip is through the roof. We actually have to use a harder tire, like most tracks when they repave them. But it's still bumpy. And so now you have grip over the bumps. But you never know. You never know what a year's done to a racetrack and all that. But so when you brought up the thing with the tires, Sandy bringing the Q tires, I don't know if he will or not, because he knows that as well. And I don't think he'd want to do that unless he was sure that we could get a new lap record. That's just my opinion.
And again, nothing official about a Q tire at CTMP. As I recall, Sandy had mentioned that they were looking to bring back the Q tire because they didn't have it in 2020 with the abbreviated schedule. So we'll check in with Sandy Noche and Stuart. Item number 1 on Nodell's notes next Monday will be, will there be the Dunlop Q tire at CTMP or not? We'll have the scoop on that next Monday on Nodell's notes. Stuart, anything else for Jordan or Ben before we wrap it up?
No, we're pretty clear here. Just want to thank the guys for joining us. It's great to get their insights and always hear about what they're up to. But I did actually speak to Sandy, Pat, when I went to one of these O'Valley track days in Sutton. And he said the issue they're having with the qualifying tires is more of an issue of inventory and availability. So it's maybe more of that being the issue. But like now that the guys have said with the racetrack and the conditions there, maybe it's not a wise idea on such a condensed race weekend.
All right. Well, we'll get the definitive word on that. Maybe they don't have enough supply for, who knows, 24, 25 riders. We will see. So Ben Young, Jordan Szoke, I want to thank you for coming on Track Announcer's Notebook tonight and sharing your insights, your thoughts. And Jordan, you've always been very open and honest and sharing what's going on in your life away from the racetrack. But now that Ben has taken up golf, we'll maybe have to put together a little foursome either the week of CTMP or perhaps right after it. There's some great golf courses up there in Durham region, and one of them's my favorite, Oak Ridge. I think you'll love that golf course when you get a chance to play it. So on behalf of Jordan Szoke and Ben Young and my co-host Stuart Nodell, Pat Gonzalez saying thank you for joining us on this edition of Track Announcer's Notebook. Have a great week, and we'll see you back here next Monday night when our special guests will be the Amateur Sport Bike Podium from Calabogie, Brad McRae, along with Matthew Simpson and Nathan Clayford. 3 very talented young riders who I'm sure we'll have pro plates in 2022. Have a great week. We'll see you back here next Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.
Take care.
Thanks,
We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right.
Have a good one.
Chat soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Stuart.
Thanks, Pat.